Okay, so my name is Joanie Lemercier. I'm a visual artist. I usually do projection-based works. I work with festivals, with galleries. And about a year ago, I was introduced by a good friend of mine to NFTs. And I had no idea about what it even was or how interesting this could be. I was a bit skeptical. But I've learned a lot in the past year. I'm gonna try to sum up a year of practice and research and discoveries and in about 30 minutes, so that's very challenging. I usually do this presentation in like an hour, so bear with me if it's an avalanche of slides, because I'm trying, that's the problem I have. I'm trying to explain everything, and there are so many sub-conversations and sub-stories, so of course it's impossible to tell everything, but I haven't found any other way to do so, so I'll do my best. So first I'm going to give an introduction to my work, so then you can understand how this could possibly translate into NFTs, because my work is physical, in IRL space, it's not online. So I started my practice in my bedroom. I was based in Bristol in the UK, and I did my first projection mapping on an origami, and I was amazed because I could use a regular projector, and instead of projecting on a screen, I could project onto objects. I could project onto sculptures. You will see a lot of minimal geometrical shapes. I did a lot of workshops with kids also to teach projection mapping. So my work is always in that sense very physical in the real space. I started a group with a group of friends. We started what we called a label. It was called Anti-DJ, and we were all interested in using light and projection, not on a flat rectangular screen, but on three-dimensional objects, architecture. We were very lucky to work with heritage, so we did a lot of projections in cathedrals and castles all around the world, so it was very, very exciting. That was about 10 years ago, this particular project. It's not very contrasted. Is there any way to turn some of the lights off? Xavier? Or someone else? Maybe just a few lights near the screen, because my work is very visual, so if you have a lot of light, it doesn't really show, so that's better. So a lot of my work is based on optical illusions. I use 3D softwares and code to create illusions. In this case, we try to break this castle and sort of crackle the structure with projection. We did a lot of projects in churches and cathedrals. Here in Grote Kerk in Breda in the Netherlands, we did a mapping of the organ, and we tried to tell the story of this organ and the story of the space. At the time, I was using Flash from Macromedia because there was no mapping tool, so I had to sort of hack my own code into Flash because I was a web developer. So that's something I did for many years. This is another projection on architecture in Miami a few years back. And projecting onto buildings is very limiting in a sense, because your building is fixed. You're not gonna, change the way the building looks completely. So I started building my own structures. So I started getting even more physical, leaving the computer screen and then building structures, building screens. And this project was called Blueprint. It's going to be shown in Leuven next week, if it's not cancelled, for 2 weeks, I think. If you have a chance, it's free. And the sort of holy grail in my practice with projection was to project holograms. Of course, the technology doesn't exist yet. You can only create illusions of 3D projections. So this illusion involves head tracking. So as the user moves, the projection moves, so you feel like it's 3D. And my latest project is also in this idea of creating 3D visuals in space with using water screens. I try to do a lot of interactive work as well. So all this is very, very far from NFTs that you usually see on your computer screen and online. So this gives you this is just to show off because we did this project with Will Smith a few years back, and I do a lot of projects in public space. for night festivals, outdoors, with a lot of audience. And of course, with the COVID situation, the past 2 years have been very, very complex as an artist to develop my practice and to make money. So NFTs, in that sense, arrived right at the right time. I'm going to skip through this real quick, but basically the point is that one moment in my life I was so surrounded by computers, I felt like I was living in a computer myself. This was an immersive space in England, I think, and I would spend the entire week doing a residency surrounded by projections, and it was fun, but it was a little bit too much in terms of being surrounded with technology. So I started doing a lot of hikes. I started going out in the nature, in the wilderness, a lot of hikes, and then I would capture some of my experience in the wilderness to do some digital projections and installations, like this one many years ago. This is the story, another projection, which was about the Mount Fuji. So I started taking my experience from nature and putting it back into artworks. So I'm obsessed with nature, and I try to recreate nature with CGI. So here you see some of my recent projects. Here I was trying to make CGI, realistic-looking compositions. And now I get to hello. So this long introduction, it makes a bit more sense later when I talk about the ethical part of NFTs. So basically, I discovered this place 3 years ago. This is what turned me into an activist. This is the largest coal mine of Europe. It's 2 hours from here, 1 hour 45 minutes actually. And this is the largest source of CO2 emissions in Europe. Every single day, 270,000 tons are being emitted to create electricity for Germany, for us, and for the countries surrounding. This is the largest machine on Earth. It's called the Bagger. It's 200 meters long, 100 meters high. Here you can see 2, but there are actually more than 20 of these machines just in this open pit coal mine, just to extract the coal and burn it around the mine. So I was so shocked when I discovered this place, and also it's just here with the fine particles that are coming out of these coal power plants. They are spread all across Europe. And then, very long story short, there are a lot of villages being destroyed. Some people are being expropriated from their homes. Their homes are being destroyed. The churches are being razed, only to create electricity. So I was really shocked when I discovered all this, and this is going to make sense and relate to NFTs in a minute. So I started being really obsessed by coal mining, because I thought this was something from the past, and actually coal mining is all around Europe. It's still growing. There's a new coal power plant that opened last year in Germany. So I was so shocked that I really wanted to change my practice. So the first way to lower my energy consumption was to understand my own consumption. So I did it's very boring, this part. But basically I looked at my bills and I looked at the kilowatt per hour that I would use every year. I stopped flying because I understood that the emissions and the consumptions were so grand that I should really personally do my best to change. So this is quite boring, but this was a way for me to understand my energy and electricity consumption over the years at the studio. So now every year I committed to lower my electricity bills by 10% every year. So it's still not much, but I'm doing my best to use less electricity and less flights. I can still do my practice. Now I ship projects all around the world, and I don't necessarily attend. So a few weeks ago we had 4 projects in the world without flying at all, so this was very interesting. So of course my own efforts are insignificant. It's not going to make any impact on electricity consumption. So I started doing activism, using projectors, to support people like Ende Gelände, Extinction Rebellion. So we go into the mine and we block the mine, basically we block the machines so to send the signal that we should stop coal mining. So it's fun. I use technology and drones for this. And Extinction Rebellion, especially in the UK, has been one of my regular trips to do projections for them, for Friday for Future. A little memory we had with Xavier a couple of years ago. We did a big projection on the Grand Place, and it was tricky. It was very difficult to access the place, the square, so we had to hide the projector, and we managed to do a big projection on the Grand Place, and it was on the news live. So you're going to wonder, how has this anything to do with NFTs? But I'm going to get there in a second. So yeah, I became an activist overnight, basically after I understood my electricity consumption. And this is the point I'm going to make with NFTs. So a lot of my work is based on this coal mine. As you can see, I'm a little obsessed. A lot of the projections I was showing before were made very quickly, because there's this. In my practice, I tend to overproduce, because all the festivals, they want new projects, so I produce, and sometimes the projects are only being shown once. So you will see how NFTs, that I can take a lot more time to produce the work, I can be in the studio, I can make very long series, so for me it makes sense as an alternative to this hyper-consumption. Okay, now let's get to it. My introduction was very long, I'm sorry. Okay, so NFTs. I've learned a lot about it, and I wish what I'm going to tell you was sold to me before, because there's a lot of illusions, there's a lot of interesting points. The main benefits I would say about NFTs, so I'm not sure if all of you knows, so what an NFT is. It stands for non-fungible token. It's basically a way to sign a digital file. So you can make it unique, you can trace its provenance, so you can see who created this digital file, and you can see who is buying it, so you can create a market, because you can create scarcity online. When in the past, anyone could take a picture, copy it without any credits, and there was no really way to sell a file online, because anyone could use it. There was no ownership. So with NFTs, you put your NFT on the blockchain, and there's the IPFS storage. I don't want to get too technical, but basically you can make an artwork, you put it online, and you can sell it, and you can track who's buying it, you can track the prices, and also, best of all, it's a new market, so it's a very good way for artists to make money. For me, that's the main point, because before, a lot of artists on Tumblr would create shit tons of content, and on Instagram and on Facebook and on all these private companies, and there was no way to retribute the artist and the content providers. And that's a shame, because this has to change. Considering the amount of work it takes to create artworks, I think having a market is a good thing. The downsides, that really took me several months to understand those points. The main one for me was the environmental impact. Ethereum, which is the main blockchain that is used for NFTs, that was used for NFTs until now, is very energy consuming. So basically the algorithm proof of work is very inefficient by design, and you just need to waste a lot of electricity to put things on the blockchain. So this I didn't know. The mechanics of the sales are very hidden. You feel like you put your stuff online and it's being bought. That's an illusion. A lot of the NFT sales are made during private conversation with investors. And all those big sales that you may have heard of, like the People sale for 69 millions, this is not like an art lover that comes and invests. That's a very prepared scheme from investors that usually have interest in their own currencies and companies, and they basically buy PR to get a lot of buyers into the market of NFTs, so then they can make a lot of profit. But most buyers of NFTs will lose money. It's a shame, but it's happening a lot. Then I'll get to more positive points later, but one thing that we also misunderstand maybe from the outside is that the values of your NFTs are based on your social credits. If you have a lot of followers, you can make very good sales, but if you have low followers, it's much, much more difficult. So I'm lucky enough to have a good sort of social credit, so I'm making very, very good revenue stream, but something people should really know is that it's based on your follower counts more than your artistic skills, or it might change in the future, but that's one of the downsides that I didn't realize before. So my first NFT drop was about a year ago. It was on a platform called Nifty Gateway. Maybe some of you heard. How many of you know Nifty Gateway? So it's one of the most successful ones because they do a lot of PR. They have a very good artist, but there are plenty of other platforms like Super Rare, Maker's Place, and many others. Known Origin, and now there are a lot of new upcoming platforms as well. Like Hachemi has become a big one. So after this, it sold out in less than 10 seconds, so I was really excited. I made basically 3 or 4 months worth of incomes and money in those few seconds. And it's basically like those shiny platonic solids, so beautiful geometric structures. I don't think it holds much artistic value, if you ask me. It's more like a nice GIF, but it did sell out, and I was very happy about it. I wanted to know, so I told you about how important it is for me to reduce my energy consumption. So I wanted to know, after the sale, the amount of energy that was used for this particular sale, because I do a boring audit, to lower my consumptions. So I use this tool online, carbon.fiy. I use this because the people from Nifty Gateway, they wouldn't really tell me anything about the consumption. I ask 1 time, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and they would just say, oh, don't worry about it. It's going to be better in the future. Right now it's not so good, but it will be better. And I had to work really, really hard with 2 friends of mine. Memo Akten, a known visual artist, and he just did a PhD recently and is a researcher as well. So he did a very, very serious research on the impact of Ethereum, from the hash rate to the equipment used to the electricity used. So it's quite boring, but the results are really striking. Another friend, Kyle McDonald, has just done a very, very in-depth research on Ethereum, and it's even worse than we expected in the past. So here on the orange line, you can see my electricity consumption over the years, and since 2018, I reduced it. It's actually quite hard to reduce. You have to turn your computer off all the time. You have to stop using the render farm all the time. So now I have to, super boring, but I have to do like low-res previews, and I try not to have all the computers, all the projectors running all the time. So it takes a lot of effort, but this curve went from 4 megawatt hour, 4.6, to 4.2, to 3.8, and the target that I'm achieving this year is like 3.5. But it was a lot of effort. And that release of 6 NFTs and Nifty Gateway, you can see that's the red dot over there. It did consume 8.7 megawatt hour of electricity. So, and it's still growing because of the secondary sales. So basically, that one release used more electricity than my studio over 3 years. And so the number is shocking when you realize that not everyone has access to electricity, and it's becoming a more and more scarce resource. But the most scary thing is that those tech companies, they don't give a shit. Not only they don't give a shit, but they won't even tell you anything about it, so you don't really figure out, so you don't have to think of it. So a lot of the crypto infrastructure relies on fossil fuels still. There are a lot of different reports. A lot of them are peer-reviewed, so it's not just random numbers. It's actually researchers who do this work. And today, 64% of the world electricity is still based on fossil fuels. Germany gets a lot of its electricity, 33% from coal. So it's really a terrible state. So I think we can have. I'm not anti-crypto, and I'm still pushing for proof of stake, and I will get to this in a minute. But I think it's important for us to just acknowledge the fact that the proof of work blockchains are really a disaster. And now that we have alternative, we should really work and try to do something about it. A single Bitcoin transaction, that's about 1 ton of CO2. Some of the numbers are being confronted by the crypto maxis and the Bitcoin maxis. Let's say it's a third or half of this. It's still a real disaster. And the Bitcoin energy consumption is going up. So I think if we want to use crypto and if we want to push this technology and all these topics that are really, really fascinating, I really want to help pushing those. I think we should recognize that not all cryptos are the same, and the proof of work is something we should really avoid. That's my opinion. I wrote a very long article about it on my blog. How are we doing this time? And you can find it on my blog if you're interested. I did a lot of research about this. I spent about 4 months doing interviews, researching. Then I did an article with the New York Times and in Wired. So the more research and information I would get, the more I was able to have more conversation with people. And there's something I found out that is the deeper problem, I believe, is what's called techno-optimism. It's this idea that technology is going to save the world. And you don't really look at the problems. You don't avoid the problem, but you hope for the technological progress to reduce the damage in the future. And this part is a little bit boring, but basically it's the same ideology that comes from the fossil fuel company. Instead of fixing the problem now, like why don't we use proof of stake and not proof of work, we expect the technology to get better in the future. And that's something that the fossil fuel industry has been pushing with net zero by 2050. So we can use Bitcoin, it's fine, and in the future it will get more energy efficient. Or we can use Ethereum every day, but maybe in the future there will be, it will be Ethereum 2.0, proof of stake. So we don't really have to look at the problem. I'm going to skip this, it's a bit boring as well. What pushes this ideology of techno-optimism is carbon offset, carbon capture, and carbon credits. These solutions that are just not really addressing the issue. So now, ethical NFTs. The good news is we have technology available as we speak today that are an alternative to the proof of work algorithms. Who knows proof of stake and proof of work? Okay, so yeah, it's a boring technical part, but basically the algorithm of proof of work, which is behind Ethereum and Bitcoin, is by design like super inefficient. You fill a room with 100 computers, they're going to all compete with each other, burning electricity, mostly fossil fuels, to solve a puzzle, and only one machine will solve the puzzle. Everything else is waste. So all the electricity that has been burned by the 99 machines has been of any use. When proof of stake, you have 100 computers, they're solving different puzzles. That's not exactly the case, but all of them will add a new block on the chain, and it's between 1,000 times and several million times more efficient than proof of work. And it achieves pretty much the same thing. Some people say that proof of stake is not as secure, because if you own 51% of the network, then potentially you could insert malicious data in the blockchain. But for NFTs, really, it's not really a big deal. For DeFi, I understand that these technical questions are very important. You don't want your blockchain to be broken or to have any sort of malicious data. So if you want to make NFTs tomorrow or start a business around NFTs and digital art, you can as well use proof-of-stake chains. There are many of them. With some friends, we created a website called cleannfts.org, and you can find all the alternatives to Ethereum. There are so many, from Tezos to Algorand, Harmony. So they do provide the same sort of benefits of strong blockchains. So yeah, if you go to cleannfts.org, you can find a long list of these alternative platforms. So with a lot of friends, we decided to ban, not to ban, but to boycott Ethereum and proof of work. So we got together and we created a series of work on this website called defend.io. So the idea was to get together as a community and to sort of lead by example and show that we could make a significant amount of money and we could create those platforms and push those platforms without burning an insane amount of electricity in the process. So maybe you know some of these artists. Many of them have very big followers, and I think the way they promoted proof of stake was really a demonstration that if you have ethics and if you stick to it, you can really move the market. We've chosen Ikenunk as a platform for the releases, which is based on the Tezos blockchain. And Ikenunk, so it was a very small project from Brazil. When Nifty Gateway and Super Rare and all the other alternatives, they're just another Silicon Valley based company. And most of them, they don't even store data on the blockchain. They have, like Nifty Gateway, they have a local database. So when you buy the items, the transactions are not even recorded on the blockchain. So there's no benefit of using Ethereum with Nifty Gateway, because if the company goes down, all the NFTs will be lost because it's not even on the blockchain. So we used Ikenunk. I really recommend it. I became a collector myself. I think I'm close to 1,000 pieces in my collection. So a lot of the artists are actually investing in their friends. Here are a few alternatives. Now on OpenSea, you can use Polygon, so Ethereum on Matic. So there's still Ethereum in the name, but it's a layer 2 blockchain. So it's a side chain, and it's proof of stake. So I really recommend, if you want to release NFTs, I think there's a project with Xavier on OpenSea with Matic, so that's really brilliant. It's not obvious if you go on OpenSea. They mix the Ethereum and the Ethereum on Matic, so it requires a little bit of an exercise to check. But OpenSea was the first major platform to make the move to proof of stake. And now OpenSea and Ikenunk are in the top 5 of the most successful and the largest volume of NFT sales. When the Ethereum are all going down, sometimes it spikes a little bit, but I think there's a great future for proof of stake. Calamint is another one. DaVinci.gallery is another one I supported. If you're interested in code-based artworks, there's a new experimental website, fxhash.xyz. What a terrible name. But you can basically mint some JavaScript and some WebGL and some HTML code. And then when an artwork is being bought, there's a unique ID generated, and each artwork will be slightly different. It's like generative art on the blockchain. They actually mint the code into a chain, so the work will be there for forever, hopefully. It's not even on IPFS. It's actually, the code is stored on chain, which is a major difference with the other platforms. I think that's almost the end. I used NFTs myself as an excuse to sell physical drawings. So all these drawings are made by a machine. I do a lot of landscapes, so I use code to generate the SVGs. I mint the SVGs on the blockchain and on IPFS. So the buyer gets the SVG, but also the physical drawing. It's not very common in NFTs to have something physical, but I believe it's, for me, it works very well. Okay, last minute. Another really cool thing with IPFS storage is that you can store code and you can write also your own smart contracts, so there's a potential for new types of work. What you see here on the right is a physical drawing on paper that the collector buys, and on Hachemi on the left, you put this piece of code full screen from your browser onto your projector, and then you have projection mapping, a projection mapping piece. So you need a video projector, but what you see here is a projection on a drawing. And I used to do this kind of work before, but I had to ship a computer, and I had, to do TeamViewer when there was an issue or something. Now, the code, everything is stored on IPFS. The collector buys the NFT, and then they can set up a physical installation in their homes. And for me, it's like a completely new way of working, because I don't even have to produce the physical objects. Everything can be set up and stored remotely. So it's a bit of a revolution in the way distribute works. This is a new series of work that was just auctioned at Miami Art Basel last night on another website called aorist.com. It's based on the Algorand blockchain, so it's a proof of stake. It's sold like really expensive. I'm really thrilled and excited because it's going to fund the next 3 years of practice at the studio, and it's a proof of stake chain, so it's energy efficient. So just another example that you can also make a lot of money outside the Ethereum ecosystem, and the same applies outside the Bitcoin ecosystem. If some of you still hold some Bitcoin, I would suggest to maybe look at Polygon, this sidechain that is also growing really fast. So if the idea is to make money and to speculate, I would suggest for people to move their Bitcoins into proof of stake, into any currencies on proof of stake, because there's also a great potential there. And this is an upcoming project. It's not finished yet, but it's a projection that I will also mint on one of these platforms. It's code-based, so here it's a very short loop, but it's going to be a sort of infinitely moving landscape inspired by some of the hikes that I was showing earlier on. I think my time is over, so I will leave it there.
Thank you, Joanie. Any questions? I'm sure you have plenty of questions. There's another line that we can pass around. We'll keep one. Questions? Yeah.
Actually, just don't understand the nexus between one thing. How is it that the Ethereum price depends on gas? It's just this technical thing I don't understand.
So the way I understand it is that the price of gas depends on how busy the network is. So in the early days, no one was using Ethereum. Like 4 years ago, I don't know, I'm not a good historian of Ethereum, but gas price was very low, below $1. Then a lot of millionaires moved into NFTs, and a lot of those platforms that, are made by very rich people and investors. They're not people from the art, they're not... So NFTs is the way for them to make more money. So then the Ethereum network got very busy, and DeFi also got extremely busy, much more than NFTs. So now the Ethereum network is congested, so there are too many requests and not enough bandwidth on the blockchain. So it makes the Ethereum blockchain harder, the puzzle is harder to solve. So you need more time, more electricity for each block to be added to the blockchain, and that's what makes each transaction very expensive, because there's a big queue. If you want to skip the queue, you pay more money. So now, like a few weeks ago, you would need to buy an NFT, you would need to do a Ethereum transaction, and the gas fee was around $300 just to buy the NFT at whatever price. So one downside for the young artist is that if you want to sell a $50 NFT on Ethereum, you can't, because it's only for the richer artists. Because even minting a work on Ethereum blockchain would cost you $100 to $200 to put it online. When with Tezos it's like 10 cents. But yeah, if the network is busy, the gas fees go to the sky.
And minting means creating your NFT in the first place. Yep.
But normally, I thought that normally these layer 2 solutions will solve the problems of Ethereum, and basically it's more expensive to have transactions on Ethereum because of the decentralization, and all these other chains are basically less decentralized. What do you think about this? Because now all these other chains, as you say, the rich investors are behind them, and there are those people who are making money. So, what is your stance on this?
Well, it's a tricky one. For me, it's going to get better in the future is not an excuse. So I dismiss any hope of a technology that will eventually solve the problem. So I won't use this technology. I will use the technology that we have available today, because Ethereum 2 proof of stake has been in the making for 7 years now, and every year they say, it's just around the corner, another few months, maybe 1 year, and it's been 7 years. And in the meantime, the amount of electricity we're burning is insane. So I don't believe Ethereum 2 is, when it's there, then I'll use it. In the meantime, that's a no-go for me, because the damage we're making to the planet is too great. Now the choice of the sidechain, either the layer 2 sidechain, that's a complex situation, because there are a lot of, as you said, as you rightly pointed out, there are a lot of private interests and millionaires and investors. But let's be honest, crypto is also mostly built on speculation, and millionaires are. And then if you want to use Bitcoin or Ethereum, thinking it's decentralized, then Elon Musk makes a tweet and everything crashes. So it's not really decentralized in that sense. So I trust chains like Matic, Polygon and Matic, and Solana, Algorand. They're still like big investors behind, but at least it's not polluting. But yeah, there's no perfect chain, I would say.
Thank you. So actually, I wanted to take there's one more question there. Yeah, one last question, and then we're gonna have to.
You said you didn't like your art. You said it was like a nice gift. Like, what would you see as okay, this is really nice art on the NFT space, for example, from your own collection, maybe?
So my first release, I didn't know what to do as an NFT. I had no clue, and so that's why I did these nice gifts as an exercise. Now that I have a better understanding of the chain, I really love what Pak is doing. His name is Murat Pak. He's quite popular online, and he does native crypto or native blockchain artworks, where he uses the mechanisms of the blockchain actually to make a point. It's almost impossible to describe, but it's really brilliant. He created his own token called Ash.
You know the haters?
The haters? No.
Yeah, he says
oh yes, right.
hate me, and whoever sends I hate you and the address of it, he sends a special contract, like smart contract address, then it earns a value in your
yeah. Yeah, he nailed exactly the process of how you create a smart contract and the mechanics of speculation, and he's playing with this, and it's absolutely brilliant. So for me, he's the best sort of native blockchain artist. And the work I sell that I prefer the most is the physical installation that a collector can recreate from the NFT. So inside the NFT, I hide some IPFS links, some sort of secrets. So from the smart contract, you can find elements like instructions to recreate something physical. Sometime I will probably mint 3D models that are meant to be 3D printed in the future. So I would love to sell a sculpture that is actually on the blockchain. The good thing is, if the physical artwork is being stolen or damaged or lost, it could be recreated from the blockchain. And for me, this is very, very interesting as an artist.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you. I'm just gonna, because you mentioned it, like actually Joanie is also part of the jury here for the Imagine Brussels. We are doing this first NFT contest in Brussels. How cool is that? Right? So we're gonna use this opportunity to basically ask artists in Brussels to basically help us dream how can Brussels could look like in the future, right? And so help us reimagine Brussels, all the streets of Brussels and places of Brussels. Rob Hopkins, that actually came here a few weeks ago from the Transition Network, he wrote this book, What If, where he basically says that the biggest problem we have is not only the problem of the climate emergency, but also a problem of imagination, right? We are unable to dream of a different world. And so with the help of artists, we can really look at the world through a different lens. And so that's why we are doing this NFT contest. There is also this new genre, solar punk, which is actually all about that. It's all about rethinking cities with technology. So not against technology, but with, and not with technology as the solution, but just humans being the solution using technology and nature. And so there's some examples like Barcelona here in a solar punk fashion, Madrid. There's actually pictures that Rob were actually showing. Or here a street of London that is being totally, What I find interesting is how art nowadays is increasingly being done with computers, right? But when you are doing art on a canvas, it was easy to sell it as an artist. But if you do art on a computer, how do you actually sell it? That's the problem that NFTs is basically solving. And that's good news because we need artists, and so we need to make sure they can make money if we want them to work and, help us dream. And so the second goal is to actually also teach NFTs to artists here in Brussels. So this is going to happen in the next couple of months ahead of us. We're going to do an exhibition in spring here at the Citizen Corner. So if you're an artist yourself, please go ahead. It's a great opportunity to learn. Also, there are some prizes. We are creating a DAO for Brussels that's basically going to buy the NFT pieces they're going to win as per the jury. We're going to decide, so a big responsibility for you, Joanie, and the others. And so, we have Joanie, we have Sumaya from Women in Urbanism, Anne-Catherine Verdict, and then also Luc Skeleton, who's been kind of doing solar punk for 40 years, actually. I wasn't even alive and already understood all of that. So anyway, go on Imagine.Brussels and we'll find all the information about that.